Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. This is Dylan Kemna with OptiCall. Appreciate you tuning into today's webinar. We're going to be rolling out a series of webinars touching on some different challenges that we see over the phones. I also have OptiCall's president, Bill Mercier, on the line with us. Bill, are you there?
I am. Yeah, thank you, Dylan.
Awesome. So today's presentation is really meant to be educational. We're going to try to keep it sweet and short to a 30-minute presentation. We'll have a few polls, and I'll let you take it from there, Bill.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you, everybody, for getting on the phone with us today. We appreciate your time, and as Dylan had mentioned, this is a new concept for us. Usually we roll out a whole idea in one webinar and keep the attendees on for about an hour, but we understand that everybody's time is tight, so we wanted to roll out a series and introduce new ideas each time that we do that, and some new concepts that might be able to help your practices get better on the phone. This particular one happens to be on the importance of consistency. So before we get started, for anybody who's not really familiar with who we are a leading provider of elective medical phone services. We've been handling elective phone calls now for 14 years, since 2002, and this has been our primary focus in ophthalmology and plastic surgery, aesthetics, and really branching out into anything that is that elective medical phone service. So the experience that we have comes from actually taking and making the phone calls that for the practices that we work with. We're focused on maximizing the customer experience, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today because that has changed over the years and convert more calls into patients. And to date, we've handled over 2 million phone calls and have boosted our clients' revenue by 15 to 20% above the industry standard. So some of the things that we're going to talk about today are we want to understand the state of the industry and what's changed. There's a lot that has changed over the years that has an effect on the patient and practice relationship. We're going to talk about a concept of consistency and how does that impact the patient experience, making sure that your team is consistent with their messaging on the phone and what happens if they're not. We're going to review a couple of phone calls and let you hear what actually happens at the practice level. And then we're going to begin to create a phone plan that really maximizes your staff's skills to convert more patients into procedures. So before we get started here, we had a couple of polls that we wanted to roll out just to get a better perspective of what's going on with the phones and the folks that are here on this webinar. So the very first poll is, do you conduct a formal training for your phone staff? So when you're bringing somebody on, do they go through a whole process of formal training? And Dylan, you want to open up that poll?
Yes, it's launched right now.
Okay.
Like we're getting some results, and yeah, I don't know why it works like that, but I think the audience can see my screen, but I don't know that you can, Bill. So
no, I can't see the screen. Okay.
Just over half the people have voted. I'll leave it up here for just a little bit longer. Okay, we've got over 70%. I'm going to go ahead and close this out.
Okay.
And now I have to go in and share the results. So I don't know if you can see this, Bill, but 50% of the audience says yes, they do have formal phone training. 33%
okay.
No, and 17% not sure.
Okay.
Did you get that?
Okay, all good to know.
Okay.
I did. Yep. So, okay, a couple more quick polls here. How soon are your new staff answering the phones? How quickly before they get into your, after they get into your office that you've hired them on, are they actually picking up a telephone?
Okay, so I've got the poll up. The options would be on the first day or two, within the first week, between 2 to 3 weeks after the first month, or not sure. Just leave this up for maybe 5 more seconds here. We've got 70% of the people voted. Leave it up for 5 more seconds. Okay, I think this is good. Close the poll, share the results. So once again, Bill, I don't know if you can see this. On the first day or two, we've got 6% of the audience.
Okay.
Within the first week is 41%. Between 2 to 3 weeks, 35%. After the first month, 12%, and then 6% not sure.
Okay. Okay. So it sounds like people are trying to get. I can't see the results, but it sounds like we're getting them up fairly quickly within the first couple of weeks. They're on the phones.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the last poll, I promise, is how confident are you that your staff are making a great first impression? As we've talked about on other webinars, if you've ever attended one of the biggest ideas that we like to share is the most important person in the practice is the one that's making that first impression. And that's typically the person at your front desk that's answering the phone. So how confident are you that they are making a great first impression?
And 5 is the best. Looks like most of you guys figured that out. We've got most of the votes in here. I can go ahead and close this poll up as well.
Okay.
So 5 being the best, 20% coming at a 5.
Mm-hmm.
At a number 4, 35%. Level 3, 35%. At 2, 10%, and nobody said 1. So looks like it's fairly mixed here.
Okay. So about half of the people think that the front desk is making a good first impression, at least on the more positive side, and the other half is more towards a average or not really feeling like they're making a great first impression.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So,
45% would have said 4s or 5s, and then.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, so let's talk about the current state of the patient experience and what's going on. Things have changed so dramatically. When I started the company out back in 2002, and it was me personally handling the phones, I remember what the questions were like. They were so different than the questions that are coming in from patients today. But then again, everything's changed in the way that we are even getting information. So here's the way that things used to work. You would put an ad out there or word of mouth. Somebody would recommend your services, and radio ad might be played, and essentially what ended up happening was that went directly to a phone call. Somebody was interested. They heard from a friend of yours. If you heard from a friend of yours, or if you heard an ad, it compelled you enough to pick up the phone and make an inquiry. Well, things have changed so much, and here's what's happening today. Because of the way that we have information delivered to us. We might hear from a friend of ours about a procedure that we're interested in, or we might hear that radio ad, but from there, where it goes is we check the internet. We go and start poking around and Googling things and trying to find out what we can find out. And then we check with our social network. We find out if anybody's had the procedure done at that practice and get any feedback from them. And then we're also checking Yelp reviews and anything that we have. There's so many tools today that are out there that really create a different way for us to look into things, procedures, whatever it may be. Then that generates the phone call. It's so different than it was even 5, 6 years ago. And this is what we have to understand when we're trying to think about our phone plan. What are we doing with trying to create the best first impression that we possibly can? And here's why this is happening. The concept of consumerism. Consumerism has really upended other industries. If we think about taxis, you look at Uber and what's happened with Uber. Everything that's out there there's so many companies that deliver services different now to us than we have in the past. And what's happened is these patients are now savvy consumers. They're looking for a different patient experience than we were delivering to them even just a few years ago. And so and what's happening with this is that we're not really delivering on that patient experience. So when you think about competition in your area, most practices will think their biggest competitor is the other practice down the road that's got a bigger marketing budget than them, but that's not the case. Our biggest competitors is everybody that person has had contact with, the companies that they've had contact with prior to coming to us. So if they've gone to the Starbucks, what kind of experience did they have there? If they've gone to the Apple store, whatever it is, and then they're comparing those experiences because of this whole concept of consumerism. now making its way into healthcare, they're comparing their experiences and we're failing. If you look at the slide here, 75% of frequent healthcare consumers are frustrated with their patient experiences. 48% of overall healthcare consumers are frustrated as well. Basically, what this is saying is the happiest patients are the ones that don't go to the doctor very often. And so there's a big perception versus reality going on. This was all based on a study from GE, and basically, out of all of the providers that they polled, 63% of the providers felt like they were delivering a great patient experience. When they polled the patients, only 40% of them felt like the provider was delivering that great patient experience, a 23% difference. So there's a perception versus reality problem going on here that practices don't realize what kind of experience are they actually delivering on. We think we're doing better than we can. And one of the other things that we need to understand too is when we have our marketing budgets and we're spending money on making that phone to ring, 94% of our marketing budget goes out to persuade the customer to call. And only 6% of that budget is really spent on answering that call. So we're putting a ton of money out for the to try to get the phone to ring, but the reality of it is we don't have a lot of resources going out to making sure the phones are picked up. And what ends up happening is calls go into voicemail. An alarming 34% of phone calls that come in to medical practices now aren't answered by a live person. And so that's a huge, huge issue when we're putting a ton of money out. So one of the things that we really wanted to concentrate on was that message of consistency. We actually have a couple of phone calls that I want to play here that are from the same exact practice with different people. Now, I've stripped out names of the practices to protect the innocent, but I wanted to show you the difference between these two telephone calls and see what they sound like. Now, I'm going to put my phone on speaker here, and hopefully my computer's up loud enough we'll be able to hear all this.
Thank you for calling. This is Kara. How may I help you?
Oh, hi, Kara. Good morning. I just have a quick question. I am scheduled to have LASIK at another practice, but I would like to know how much you guys charge.
It's going to be, let's see, yeah, 54. Oh, that's wrong. That's the LASIK. $26.30 per eye.
$26.30 per eye. Okay. All right. Thank you, Kara.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, so we had the first phone call there, which was a very quick call, basically trying to find out price. They were scheduled to have the procedure at another facility, but they were kind of shopping around to find out whether it was a better price from another provider. And as you can hear, the caller did get a lot of information from, or the staff member didn't get any information from the caller, and wasn't very confident in their answers as well. Now I'm going to play a second call, and this particular call is from the same practice, and let's hear the difference.
Thank you for calling. This is Lisa. How may I help you?
Hi. I'm just interested in LASIK and was wondering how much you guys charge.
No, well, we have several different ways that we can take you out of your glasses or contacts.
Okay.
LASIK being one of them, but we do offer other options. Have you ever been told that you're a candidate for LASIK?
No, ma'am.
Well, we do offer a complimentary screening with our refractive coordinator, who also assists Dr. in the LASIK surgeries, if you'd like to come in and see everything that you're a candidate for.
Really, I'm just kind of looking around just to see kind of a ballpark of how much it would be. Would you be able to provide the price for me, or?
Yes, ma'am. The LASIK runs about $2,400 per eye. But now we also offer, we work very closely with a finance company that payments would come out to about $88 a month.
Okay. And
how does that sound?
What was that financing company? Is it grant through credit or?
Well, it is a finance company, so they would do a background check on you. The name of the company is Allegro Patient Financing. But we work very closely with them. If you wanted to look at that as an option, we would help you fill out the form and would help you submit it.
Okay, sure. I'm going to have to speak to my husband about it just to see if when I'll be able to come in for that consult. So I'll have to give you guys a call back.
Well, great. Could I have our refractive coordinator give you a call and maybe go over a little bit more in detail with you, or could I mail you some information?
No, it's okay. I think I'm just going to try and find out first when I'll be able to come in, and then I'll definitely give you guys a call back.
All right. Well, thank you so much for calling. Have a great day. Hope to hear from you soon.
And I'm sorry, what did you say your name was?
My name is Lisa.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Lisa.
You're very welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so we can hear a big difference between the two telephone calls. One call is very short, where the other call has a lot more substance to it, a lot more conversation going back and forth and trying to provide value for the consultation coming into the office. Dylan, do you have any comments on that you'd like to add as well?
I wanted to put out a disclaimer that neither one of those were OptiCall calls, just so everybody knows that's not our staff on the line there. But you're on point with what you're saying. That the first call, there was really no attempt at all to convert that caller. It was just to provide the basic information and answer questions with no effort to invite them in. The second call, she definitely made much more of an effort, and she asked some good questions. It lacked a little bit of structure in terms of the flow and when she asked those questions, but there was a much greater effort there to try to convert that opportunity.
Exactly. And so, we have to ask ourselves, why is there consistency lost on the phones? One of the reasons why franchises are so successful is because everything that they do within the franchise is duplicated. Every process is the exact same, regardless of who's doing it. If you're working in McDonald's and you're flipping hamburgers exactly like the next person that's going to come in after you flips hamburgers. Everything is consistent. And so what ends up happening on the phones is sometimes we have the wrong people that are answering the phones. If we work in a very busy practice and we're not able to get to all of the calls, calls will roll out to the billing department or people that are not used to answering these questions. And so in this case where we heard, similar questions go into the same practice, most likely that's what happened, where they had one person who is accustomed to answering these phones, has been educated on what to say, questions to ask, what the process is, and another person who doesn't do it. And they feel like, their job simply is to answer the question that the caller has. And if they've done that to the best of their ability and the caller is satisfied, then their job is done. So, but that's not the job. The job goes way beyond that. One of the other reasons is that there sometimes is improper training or no training at all, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to ask the training question, how quickly people are on the phones. It takes time for people to get on the phones and understand. And, when we talk about the concept of training, a lot of practices think, well, we'll train them about the phones, we'll train them, how the phone works, we'll train them how the computer system works and our scheduling system, how that all works. And maybe give them a little bit of basic education on the procedures that we perform or the appointment types. But what they never really receive is customer service training. And that's probably one of the biggest pieces of this, is to get people to understand the whole concept, especially with this idea of consumerism making its way into healthcare, that customer service is absolutely critical in creating that patient experience is so important. And so another reason is phone staff are multitasking. I was just on the phone with a practice yesterday who told me that they watched patients actually walk out because the front desk is on the phone at one time with the patient in front of them, trying to go back and forth between the two. And this other person that's standing behind them is not being helped. And so instead of hanging around and waiting their turn, they decided this isn't the experience that I want. And this is a practice that charges, you know, $5,000 for a procedure. And so you're looking at lost revenue that's going out the door if the phone staff are multitasking and unable to handle these calls accordingly. And then staff turnover. Every time we have staff turnover, what ends up happening is you've got to train all over again and get somebody, you know, on the same page again. So you're starting at square one. And we all face staff turnover, but how do you make your staff the happiest that you can be? Maybe that's another webinar idea that we'll have, which is, you know, hiring and training these staff, making sure you have the right people on the bus. So creating a great patient experience does more than just increase the patient satisfaction. It helps the entire practice by a couple of different ways. Number one, it drives down operating costs and can improve the bottom line. Number two, it improves that employee satisfaction and retention as well. If we've got happy patients, we've got happy staff. So happy staff because of happy patients. It's a full cycle. It goes all the way around. And then what ends up happening is we don't have the staff turnover, and we have those familiar faces that the patients are used to coming in to see, and it creates loyalty. It builds that brand and a reputation that you want by having a great patient experience. So let's take a look at 8 steps to better conversion, some things that you can do within your practice and do them right now. Number one is you want to assign the most informed, well-educated staff to handling these premium calls. These are the most important calls that are coming in for your practice, and we want to make the best first impression that you can. So make sure that the best people that can answer them are the ones that are getting those phone calls. Number two, ensure those calls follow a format that maximizes the potential for gaining business. As Dylan said before, the second call that we listened to was good. There was a lot more information on it, but it followed kind of the flow of the phone call didn't really follow the way that it should, the path that it should, that would have been maximized a close on an appointment. And that will definitely be the next webinar, is talking about structuring those phone calls. Script the calls in advance to the best that you can. We all know what questions are going to come out. We know that price is one of the biggest questions that comes out, and everybody's so afraid of price. And price is only an objection in the absence of value. If we can provide value when somebody asks price, then price becomes irrelevant or becomes less relevant. So scripting calls out, knowing what the most frequently asked questions are, and having the answers to them handily is definitely something you want to do. You want to ensure, obviously, that your staff is kind. You know, correct on every phone call. Everybody's going to make mistakes. We'll talk about that in a moment. But the biggest idea here is kind. There should be no room for any attitudes on phones at all. We all understand that we will take patient calls where you have elevated situations and patients with a lot of anxiety in their voice. And how do we work with those calls to get them to calm down and make sure that we can take care of them the best that we can. And one of the best things that you can do is ensure that your staff is kind and polite on those phone calls. Call your own office as a patient and experience what it's like. A lot of times I'll call random numbers that I know are for practices in OptiCall just to hear the pickup and hear how they greet. And every single time I get somebody on the phone, I'll let them know after their greeting that, hey, you sounded great. You really impressed me with the way that you sounded. And give them something that they can be happy about, because if you can give a little compliment like that, I promise you the rest of the day they're going to have a smile on their face and do a good job. Number 6, research your competition. If you've got another player in the area that's doing a really good job, call them. Go in for an office visit. See what they're doing. What patient experience are they giving, and is it different than yours? And take the ideas that you like and implement them in your own office, and then improve on them. Find ways to improve on the things that you like that they're doing. Allow your staff to answer these calls uninterrupted. We all know what it's like when we're on the phone and somebody says, I'm sorry, can I put you on hold another time, please? Can I please put you on hold again? We only have so much time during our days Our time is so valuable. Now that we have that 5 or 6 minutes of spare time to make a phone call to find out and get information about something, we need the answers when we have the person on the phone. And if we're constantly interrupted, not only does that say something about, that they are not valuing our time, but is also an indicator as to what's going to happen when you get into the office as well. And number 8, prepare to make mistakes. Everybody's going to make mistakes. If you can record your phone calls, listen to your phone calls, do your best to try to correct those mistakes through proper coaching, that's one of the best things that you can possibly do. And, if you don't have a way of recording phone calls, there are plenty of ways to do it. Just let us know. We can help you out with some ideas on how to do that. But that is a big way to get your staff in tune with what your phone plan is and how you want things done in a consistent fashion. So we're going to continue with our webinar series. We're going to open this up for questions in a minute, but a couple of ideas that I just want to pass on to you before we move on. Here's why we're doing it. We are trying to survive this new age of consumerism, this new way that the patient is thinking about our services and the way that they're thinking before they even pick up the phone to call us. So the very first thing that we need to do is understand that the patient experience goes beyond the clinical aspect. It's everything from when they're first making that phone call to walking in the front door. It's the entire package. And we have to take a look at that and make sure that we're doing what we need to do to put the best message out there, that we're creating a brand that we can be proud about and that is going to bring back additional patients because we have happy patients coming in. Number 2, empower the staff. Since they play such a huge role in this experience, happy staff equals happy patients. We have staff meetings and we sit down with everybody when we are trying to roll out a new plan or whatever it may be, and we want their input. Because if they help us with building an idea, building the phone plan, whatever it may be, if they help us, then they can't say no. They're responsible for helping us put policies in place or building programs or whatever it may be, and they're happy to do that. One of the things about the staff today, particularly the millennials, they're looking for responsibility. They're putting their hands up and saying, give me more. So give them more, and this is one of the ways to do it, is to empower them. Find technologies that improve upon the patient experience. What I mean by this is, web schedulers, different ways to communicate with your patients, technologies, companies like us. The next one is form partnerships with companies that strategize around the patient experience. There are a lot of different companies that you can look at that can help with this whole concept of helping communicate with the patient and doing the best that we can to get them into our office. And move beyond fixing what is broken mentality. Start embracing the idea of creating something unique, a completely different experience, because I can tell you that the majority of practices that are out there are not grasping this concept that consumerism has made its way into healthcare. If you grasp this concept and you say, how can we do something now and really make a different experience than everybody else's, you're going to own your market. And so with that, we'll open it up to whatever questions that you may have. And we're just about a half an hour here, so we appreciate anybody who can stay on the phone. We'll stay on as long as you have any questions that you want us to answer for you.
And nice job, Bill. We do have one question here about how do you recommend separating new patient phone calls from the existing patient phone calls?
That's a great question, and I'll answer this. But the best way that we like to do it is through, and I don't want to say auto attendant because people think auto attendants. I hate auto attendants. No, please listen carefully, as the menu items have recently changed for Spanish Press 2, so on and so forth. And I have literally listened to auto attendant messages that have gone on for a minute and a half with every single option that I could possibly press. What I would suggest is a simple message before, I call it a triage message. Before the patient gets to the right person, you can say something along the lines of, if you're a new patient interested in information or would like to schedule your initial consultation, please press 1. For all other calls, please press 2. something along that lines. It's not an auto attendant, it's a triage. And what you're doing is you're separating the patients. Now, it won't be perfect. You will still get people that call in on the new patient prompt just because they hear that first, but you'll do a really good job at separating the different patients into the categories.
I think that's well put. That's the only question I have in queue right now. I wanted to mention on the survey as you close out of today's webinar, there's some questions. One question is about the challenges that you're having on the phones at your practice. We'd love to get your feedback so we can kind of plan out our next topics on the webinar series. There's also an offer for a free phone assessment if you have not had a chance to evaluate your own staff to get a barometer on how well they're converting leads. I recommend taking advantage of that offer. So it looks like you have the link up there for our next webinar.
I do. We'll be getting an invite out to everybody for the next webinar that we've got going on April 20th at 4 p.m. Eastern. Again, it'll be about a half an hour for the format. This one will concentrate specifically on building an effective phone plan. We'll have some more phone calls to play for you for examples. And we'll we want to help get practices into this idea of thinking about the patient experience differently. And if we can do that, we know you'll do a better job with the patients that are calling into your office and increase your surgery numbers.
All right. So I don't see any other questions coming in. That puts us right at 30 minutes. So the other thing is we're recording today's presentation. We'll send out the link to everybody that registered today. And we'll put these slides up on our OptiCall SlideShare account, but I'll be sending that out as well on the follow-up email. We appreciate everybody's time today and hope you can join us for our next presentation, and we'd love to get your feedback. Great job, Bill.
All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate everybody's time on the phone, and we will talk to you all soon.
Awesome. Bye-bye, Bill.